Welcome to the EdTech Media Moment. I'm your host, Joe Pizzo, and I'm honored to welcome Bruce Reicher, one of the authors of the newly released book entitled Scripted. Let's listen in. Distance learning is used a whole lot in today's educational system, and it's a bit controversial. Some folks like it, and some folks say that it's not really serving the students. What do you think?
I think distance learning, when the students go on from a student perspective, it's not going to be what the classroom is. There's not going to be a substitute from a teacher in the classroom, the rapport when you see the kids come in, have them open up their projects to, go with them and, maybe go over a project with them, whatever it might be for that day. So I think for the students, there's a different expectation that it's really a check-in with them, and you might be giving them a little bit of a lesson. But I think for students, they also like it to be 15 minutes or less. If I'm a student, I would not want to hear back-to-back, 30, 40-minute lectures. And if I had 4 or 5 of them in a day, that would really be like a lot of fatigue. And we're even getting new terms coming out of like students having Zoom fatigue or Google Meet fatigue. Like, we weren't talking about this a month ago, but we're starting to talk about it now. So I think you really need to think, if you were in the student's chair or perspective, keep it short and simple, make sure they're okay, get to whatever content you want to get to, and then let them work, because they're all not going to be there at the same time. It's not going to be synchronous learning. They can go on all different times for a variety of circumstances. So I think that would be the most important thing when you're presenting it to the students. Put yourself in their shoes. How would you take in the information best when you're teaching it?
Now, you mentioned being with the students and checking their projects as they're coming in, and seems to be more interactive when you're in person. So how do you translate that across if you're not right there in the classroom with them? How do you do that through a video conference?
Yeah, I don't think you can get the same effect of if you were there in person. I think the best thing you could do in the video conference is give them information off of maybe what they handed into you, points that you want to make to the whole class. And the other thing that I think a lot of students like is, I don't know if they necessarily all want a video conference. A lot of times I find myself just giving feedback in email and saying, I really like this part in your video, but you could add in a title and maybe fade out the music. And then just get an email back from them saying, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then it's done. I've already almost had like my mini conference with them. And I think that conference can take place in many different forms. It can be through video, but you might have a whole bunch of students showing up. So I think it's really effective through email and giving them really authentic feedback by watching their video project and giving them back an email, or even better, and I've seen more and more people do this, use some type of voice extension, voice recording, where they could just press play and actually listen to you. They don't have to see you, but listen to your feedback almost like you're sitting right next to them in the classroom. And so far, the kids have responded really well to that type of feedback. And I've been impressed with their work, that I'm not sitting next to them. I'm not going over to them to check their projects. And a lot of times, a simple email of just add this and this, what you did so far is terrific, but adding in these couple elements, they get it. And the other part for me, instruction-wise, is go out to the internet and find a really good YouTube video that's succinct right to the point that you're making. So for example, if I want them to do credits in WeVideo, I can tell them, but it's better if I just give them the link, the exact link that does it. They can watch a video of it and play it over and over and over again. And hopefully, they'll be able to pick it up.
So are you telling us that by removing yourself from the entire lesson, becoming more of a guide, that you're actually using good educational principles? And do you think that that would ever replace being in the classroom, or will that be a supplement someday to being in the classroom? Will there be days on, days off?
I mean, I could definitely see that happening, because before you even get to start talking about curriculum assessment, some of those pieces, you really have to talk about people's health. So if there's going to be a limit on how many people can go back to a specific place, which in our case is a school, but even into a public place, let's just throw out a roundabout number and say 200. 200 people could be in one place. Well, my particular school, which is a small school, there's only about 450 students and there's about 60, 70 staff members. That would be way over whatever the limit might be. So I could totally see in the future some type of blend where teachers and students will go in certain days, half days, be home certain days, do a blend of the remote learning and regular learning. And if you think about it safety wise, lunch. Lunch is going to be very difficult to do if they require you to have masks. That would help that situation. If there was an AM or PM session, you would go home for lunch or eat lunch at home before you came into the school. So I think for me, it's like health and safety first before you can even go forward with some of the really cool things that you could do now that you did in distance learning to bring into the classroom. Well, first, you're going to have to get everybody back to the classroom safely, teachers and students. And there's been a lot of talk of, well, all the students are younger, so they'll be much healthier. However, now the conversation has also added in, which makes perfect sense. Well, the teachers are all different ages, so they could obviously be in their early 20s out of college till whatever age there's going to be, and you're going to have a mix of people, at the school, regardless if it's elementary, middle school, or high school. There's going to be a mix of ages in the school.
Now, I know that a lot of parents might be concerned if we had staggered schedules and we had on days, off days, half days, maybe lunch in certain places that wouldn't be possible in other places because of busing. There's also the implications where you have both parents who, if we open up the economy again, if we open up the society again, they'll be going out to work, to off-home sessions to their site. And what happens to the child who's on a half-day session, but there's no one home to watch that child?
There are going to be so many questions to this. And I think as you're doing, and it was a very good question, as you're peeling the onion back and thinking of more and more scenarios, I think it's going to be a type of thing where take all the questions, safety obviously first, and all the other curriculum questions, who's going to be with the student, questions that arise. And I think we're going to have to do, the best that we can. I mean, hopefully a lot of students, if their parents are working, I think in the normal workplace, I think it's going to be more and more popular to, telecommute or maybe be home 4 days and go into the office one day, that more parents would be home. But certainly with younger children and elementary children, that's going to be a huge issue. And we know at schools already how popular, before and after school programs are, even when you have both parents working. So I don't think there's an exact answer to that. I think you're just going to have to, figure out solutions, and the solution too might be different for, a rural school as compared to an urban school. I think it's all going to be specific to your school district, even if the kids get lunch from the school or they don't get lunch from the school. I don't think there's one pat answer where I could say, you know what, every single student needs to go home, or you have to find a place for those students because nobody's home. And I think with collaboration involving everybody in a school, I think every school is going to come up with a unique answer for themselves.
We look at the model of teaching students in the classroom or at home or in a combination therein, and that tends to be our major focus. But I would have to ask, what happens in a situation where teachers say, we don't have conferences to go to because of this move to distance learning? So how do we get our professional development?
I mean, I think that the field right now is so ripe for professional development in terms of, like Thomas Freeman's "The World is Flat," that as we get more comfortable as educators, it doesn't matter the tool that you're using, whether it's Zoom, Google Meet, there's a bunch of other ones. The first time that I used it, just like everybody else, I was uncomfortable using it. I didn't know how to see everybody on the screen, record it, use some of the tools with it. But now, 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, to send somebody a link and say, I'll meet you on a Zoom call or Google Meet, it's like, okay, just send me an email, and it's become, commonplace. And for myself, I've done professional development, even in a week. I might be going to a couple of different states in the United States, not necessarily giving the professional development, but almost being a part of it. And I've had the opportunity to go to different countries and go into these GEG Google education groups. They're open to everybody, and it's the same format. Just send me the link and password. They vet you to let you like in the room. And then think about it's tremendous that you don't have to travel any place. There's no time restriction. It might be a different time zone restriction, but I don't have to, be concerned with, oh, well, this conference is in the Jersey Shore, so that's 2 hours away from where I live. I might not go to that one. That's 4 hours in the car in one day, as opposed to just get the link now. Just click on it. They let me in the room, and then you're off with the learning. And I think for me, it's an analogy of like if anyone ever went to an ed camp and you go to pick the classes that you want to go to me, this is just like an opened up ed camp by doing it all virtually. And you're talking to experts in, if it's a Google thing, a video thing, whatever, it could be a health and wellness thing. It depends on the topic. And you have experts in the room, and you have a lot of educators in the room and energy coming up with, terrific solutions that you might not have thought of just because you're in a different location and a different place.
The business world has used video conferencing and sometimes audio conferencing across great distances to not only cut down on travel, but also to have immediate access to their resources on hand physically. Do you think that maybe somewhere down the road, the educational community and the business community may find that both are facing very similar challenges, and that may be an opportunity for a bridge to be built between the two and a lot more cooperation and co-planning even?
No, definitely. And I think it even starts, which is sometimes difficult to think about, but you don't have to be just in your district, wherever it may be, to do professional development. It could be 3 or 4 districts around you in one place and involve the community, involve business. It could be a regional thing. It could be a state thing, a multi-state thing. I think you just have to plan it out clearly. And the other clear part for me as an educator, when you get business people involved in it, some type of shared thing, is, make sure they're set up a little bit, almost like a career professional day, that a lot of people come in and they're fine talking for 40 minutes and taking questions from students, where other people, they're not so used to, being in front of students, and they might finish in 5 or 10 minutes when they had 40 minutes. So I think it's advantageous to do, and I do this with some of the things as a Board of Ed member, is go through rehearsal, go through planning. Do not do this cold just to go online and say it should be, okay. Plan out what you're going to do. And just like everything else, the better planning you have, where here's the business person's role or community person's role, here's the educator role, flush it out a little bit, or else, and I've seen some of these, they get flushed out in the middle of watching it, which you certainly don't want to do. You want to be as prepared as possible, and you don't have to spend a lot of time planning, but just thought going into, here's exactly what we're going to do, in the next half hour. So it has some type of format.
Now, planning is indeed a very major part of this whole process. But teachers like to have some quick workplace tips, some things to keep the flow moving, some things to make them better educators. How can we do that?
I mean, I think the best solution to that is open it up not only in your school district, but in your state, in the country, and other countries, and find exemplars of people who, I'm a media teacher who teaches media in the country, that I can go, not only observe their lesson and maybe come in the room with them, but just talk to them to say, how did it go with a video lesson of doing it online as opposed to being there? What are some things that you did? Because, in my mind, you have a 10 or 15 minute window at most to really teach and have everybody engaged. What are some of the things that maybe they did and workflows that they're doing that maybe I'm not doing? And I give you an example of like a workflow is, a lot of people were preparing video lessons, which takes a long time to prepare. And when you do the pre-production, a lot of times you want to re-record it over and over and over, which is terrific. However, time-wise, it's very hard to do that. So I learned from some teachers, and I do it myself. I prepare the lesson, but I do the video of the lesson within the video conference. So I do, say hi to the kids, do the lesson in the video conference, say goodbye to the kids. They did a great job. Most of these video conferencing tools record and then render, or right away they're done within a minute or two. And then in programs like QuickTime and other programs, you can simply just trim the beginning and the end of a video session. And then I take mine and literally post it right on Google Classroom. And importantly, so if a student is not there that day, that's okay. They can go to the coding video lesson and they could see the exact lesson of me doing screen sharing that they would have seen that in a regular classroom anyway. They can go and look at it, and they could play it and rerun it if they need to get specifics, on a part. So I really think the sharing is going to become bigger and bigger. Who is doing this well, that you can look to either in your building, in your district, in your state. And I think those people are going to quickly stand out, that they kind of have mastered this 10 or 15-minute video lesson to get across their point and get it across quickly.
The students are used to being in the classroom, and they're used to having the teacher there greeting them and instructing at least part of the time. Now they're home, and there are a lot of things that are vying for their attention. Sometimes the pet sitting across their lap as they're trying to sit through a conference, whatever it may be. So do you have any tips for them? How can they manage this situation better?
I mean, I think for every single student, it's just individual how they can manage it better and let it suit their style the best, right? They don't need to be in a class at a specific time. So if they sleep late in the morning, they sleep late in the morning. And then, they can go to the class whenever they want. If they miss the deadline of, when the conference was, the video conference, as a parent and them, just let them go watch it another time. And really, they're like differentiating out to their skill level. Are they a morning person, afternoon person? When do they like to get work done? And I wouldn't necessarily give them like ground rules of this is what you would have to do. Because I think just like adult learning for the student learning, you're really going to have to like differentiate it out of, what is best for them. And you brought up a great point before that, there are so many variables, we wouldn't even know what they were. What's good. Hopefully the pet running on the back of the screen is the biggest of their problems, because there's so many different issues. We just don't know of what's going on, whether they're taking care of siblings, whether their parents aren't home. There's a huge list that we could talk about. So I think you just have to kind of meet them where they're at. And if they're not there, that's okay. They can watch the video of the lesson and you could communicate, with them at different times.
One final question. Do you have any words of assurance for the parents and the students and the educators, the teachers, the administrators, to get through this new wave of learning? How can they best adjust individually and collectively?
I mean, I think a couple of things. I think one is just like keep it simple. If you're the educator doing it, keep it simple. The tools that you're using, a lot of tools were thrown out in the beginning. Here's 10 different tools to record the screen. Find one that you are comfortable with and stay with that one. And for the teacher, the parent, the student, you have to realize at some point you need to take a break. Take a morning break, take an afternoon break, go for a walk, do some of these different physical things that you could do, because it's not realistic that you had 6 or 7 classes and now every single day you're going to do 6 or 7 Zoom sessions. So I think people are really finding out, the analogy of this is a marathon. You have to pace yourself. And, the word you hear over and over again is grace of, give yourself grace. Everybody has a bad day. If, a student had a bad day at home, they had a bad day. Let them go outside for a little bit and relax. And same with parents who are in the boat of working at home. And really for parents, if you have elementary students or younger students, wow, you're teaching them and you're teaching yourself and you're being a mom or you're being a dad and helping out with the educational process. It's a lot. It's a lot at once, along with what's going on in the world. So I would just say, be kind to yourself, and at some point, get that digital balance of whatever it's going to be you're comfortable with. for me at 3 o'clock, I'm like, I'm done. I need to go for a walk, go watch TV, just unplug from everything to kind of get your, juices back a little bit. That it becomes diminishing returns if you're just on the computer the whole day. So I would say keep it simple, be kind to yourself, and if you're having a bad day, we have a bad day. Just go to the next day and forget about it, because everybody is, the adult, the student, the parent, everyone is going to have a day where things are just not going well. And the best you can, just try to roll with it and come back the next day and be positive and start over again.
We appreciate you taking the time to sit with us today for the EdTech Media Moment. And I know that you're a very busy individual, so I want to just say thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the EdTech Media Moment. Our guest today has been Bruce Reicher. Bruce is one of the authors of the book Scripted. He's also a teacher and a Board of Education member, and one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. So thank you so much, Bruce, for giving us your time. For the EdTech Media Moment, I'm your host, Joe Pizzo. Have a wonderful day.